hard to believe that it's been since 2019 since we've had a CF Education Day, and how incredible it feels for us all to be together again. So why have a CF Education Day? This day is really about a lot more than education. It's really about connections. It's a time to come together for the CF community, to support one another, and really to celebrate the remarkable progress in both CF care and research. More importantly, today is really about our patients and our families living with CF, whose strength and resilience just really inspires us every day. So thanks to everybody for being here today. We're also streaming to Facebook right now, so I'd like to give a shout out to our virtual attendees. So thank you everybody for joining here and online. So let's make tonight a night to remember. I would like to thank our sponsors. Without their support, we wouldn't be here tonight. So our platinum sponsor tonight is Vertex, and our rep is Lisa Chamberlain. And Lisa was kind enough to bring her GPS crew with her. And the GPS crew are the people who work behind the scenes and figure out how to get Vertex approved, and they really have done wonders for getting resources to our patients. Our gold sponsors, I'd like to thank Nestle, which makes Zenpep, and we've got John Blankenship back there. And I'd like to thank Viatris, which is the maker of Toby and Toby Pods, and that's Mark Workman over there. And I would like to thank Baxter. Thank you so much for being here, Jess Eisenhut, with the vest. So I wanted to explain something to you really about our sponsors, is when our doctors prescribe medications and devices, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And it's very complex navigating insurance, and we really run into a lot of difficulty with access to medications and devices. This is where our incredible pharmaceutical representatives step in. They provide us with invaluable resources, updates, insurance coverage information, and even sometimes if a patient is in immediate need, they'll go ahead and get us both medications and devices. So really, for that, I want to really thank all of our pharmaceutical and device reps who are here tonight. You really are part of our team. Just really wanted everybody to know how much you really do for our clinic. So tonight you might have noticed that this is a really kind of unusual and cool place to have an event. This is the Four Roots campus, and I wanted to introduce Jay Groves. There's Jay over there. Jay is the executive director of the very exciting culinary medicine program here at Four Roots. He is a clinical exercise physiologist and has a doctorate in education and health promotion. He served as the founding director of Vanderbilt University's cardiopulmonary rehab program from 1984 to 1997. So he has a lot of experience. And during those years that he had at Vanderbilt, he worked extensively with cystic fibrosis patients. So I'd really like to welcome Jay up here, and he can tell us about this amazing culinary medicine program.
Okay, he's got the slides.
Yeah.
So you can move the slides from there?
Yes, you can just move them with the camera. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes, I'll show you when you go up, because yours is present on it. And you have to put this in.
Just with the microphone.
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely, yes.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Okay, perfect. It is an honor to have you here. Knowing that this group hasn't met for the past almost 5 years now for very understandable reasons, we feel blessed to host you at the Four Roots Farm campus. Appreciate the partnership, Candace. Appreciate everybody coming out on a very brisk, cold Florida night. I've only lived in Orlando for about 5 years now. I've lived in Jersey and Tennessee and Missouri, and I'm Florida strong, which means I can handle 105-degree heat index, but you get me below 60 degrees and I'm suffering. I'm just looking for layers that for some reason I can't find them in my closet any longer. But we are blessed to have you here. So I want to welcome you to the Four Roots Farm campus. And I've got a few minutes just to kind of tell you about what we're doing here. And then eventually you're going to get to meet Dr. Monica Agarwal, who's our Chief Medical Officer, and is going to talk to you a little bit about nutrition in relationship to heart disease and the CF population. So I want to talk about the Four Roots Farm. You know, what is it? Why is it here? What's already in place and what's to come? The reason we need a place like the Four Roots Farm campus is because we very much have a broken food system. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We have more food waste than any country on the planet right now. And then we have a greater percentage of our population that goes hungry than any modernized country in the world. So we've got this dichotomy between food waste, we've gotten more than we need, and between 12 and 18% of the population that may not know where their next meal is coming from. In addition to that, those of us that have access to plenty of calories may not always make the best choices around what and how we consume. So we're struggling with high rates of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, diseases that are very lifestyle related. So the vision for this campus is to create a place where we can do research, education, and even clinical services that really help us utilize and nourish the power of food to build healthier communities. And that's ultimately what this campus is about. Now, the president and founder of the Four Roots Farm campus you may know of indirectly. Has anyone ever eaten, other than tonight, at a Four Rivers Smokehouse? Okay, pretty well known in Orlando and throughout the state of Florida. The founder of the Four Rivers Smokehouse is our president, founder, and CEO, John Rivers. John had a 20-year career in healthcare before he founded his restaurant industry, which has been very successful. But he and his wife, Monica, created a foundation because they wanted to create a place where it was possible to do research, to grow food, and to create clinical programs that taught all of us about the importance of soil, seed, and human health. It's all related. If we don't take better care of our soil, the things we grow will lack nourishment, and those of us that consume that produce, our health may suffer. So, see if I get my slide to advance here. Sorry. All right, so we're going to start over here to see if we can try this again. All right, now then. Okay, slide number 2, thank you. So the Four Roots Farm is dedicated to restoring the balance between our community and nature, a relationship that we believe is forged to sustain life for all of us as a part of God's creation. We want to get back to the way creation was intended in terms of the way we nurture the soil and its relationship to our health. So we're focused on regenerative farming practice here, so we want to leave the soil in better condition than we got it when we put the seed in the ground, sustainability practices, and awakening of what we call the synergy, the harmony between food as medicine. This whole concept that food is medicine. What we take into our bodies can dramatically impact our health and our health outcomes. So the vision for the Four Roots Farm campus is to create a healthy, sustainable, and secure regional food system, because the best way to fix the food system is to do it locally, and it's based on 4 key roots. One is education, and I'll talk a lot about that in just a few minutes. Health and well-being, the Center for Health and Well-being, the Center for Culinary Health that we're creating is very much focused on that pillar. Sustainability in the way we build this campus, the way we think about our soil and our farming practices, and economic development. Once this campus is fully built out, we'll employ between 150 and 200 employees here on campus. So when John and Monica started to think about creating this campus, they first started creating services and resources to align with those 4 pillars. The first partnership with Four Roots, and the Four Roots company has been around since about 2015, was a partnership with Orange County Public School System. And we helped a couple of local high schools kind of revitalize their ag science programs. So Ocoee High and Edgewater High, we helped them really restore their greenhouses, adjust their curriculum for ag science, bring some volunteers to campus, and really restore their programs so they could have more vibrant ag science programs. We continue to be involved with local schools and Boys and Girls Club, and I want you to understand that this campus is not just an exclusive place. It's really designed to serve this entire community. Those of you that understand much of Orlando understand the demographics of the zip code and the community that we're in right now. In addition to that, Four Roots started a food bank. It's called Meet the Need right now, but it initially was called Feed the Need. And it was started during the pandemic. So imagine yourself being John Rivers and your business is restaurant industry. And the second week of March, the governor releases an edict, second week of March of 2020, that shuts down every restaurant in the state for who knows what period of time. You're thinking about your workforce and who do you hang on to and who do you let go of. Lots of important business decisions. But John saw this as an opportunity. He began to think about the fact that all of our restaurants, refrigerators were full, we had food on the shelves, and every restaurant in Orlando had the same problem. What do you do with this food? So quickly overnight, he marshaled and put together Feed the Need. Let's bring this food together and let's get it to school-age children who no longer can get to school and access the lunches and the meal programs that are so vital to their life. So we have a food bank, and that food bank has been continued. And so we've served 2.3 million meals over the last 6 years, lots of million pounds of produce, and much of it is almost all of it, in fact, is food that we resource locally from local farms. We also have a mobile food bank, and we've partnered with the Pulmonary Clinic to bring some fresh fruit and produce to your clinic, and that's been a very important. What's that? You are welcome. You all are practicing food as medicine. That's just exactly right. You bring it to the clinic, and your patients are taught and educated about it and then provide it. It's just a perfect example of what we want to do more of. In addition to that, we have a CSA program. A CSA program is essentially how you can bring a farmer's market to your home. You can order fresh produce from local farmers where we resource the food and we send it to you, we mail it to your home, and we have about 1,600 families that take advantage of that. Our Fresh by Four Roots program, our CSA is SNAP eligible, and we're able to access SNAP bucks as well. Well, as John and Monica began to think about the Four Roots program, we were having an impact with all these resources. They realized that they wanted to create a place where people could come and learn about some of these practices. So as John was beginning to go around town and talk about this vision and share it with various groups, many people got excited about it. And among those folks was Dr. Phillips Charities. Dr. Phillips was in the process of developing the place where we're at, the Packing District. Many of you know about the history of the Packing District and the fact that there's a lot of things happening to revitalize the community. And essentially, Dr. Phillips went to John and said, John, we think this project is so important, we want you to create the campus right in the middle of the Packing District, and we will give you the land to do so. So you are sitting in the middle of an 18-acre property that's being developed in part because of a very generous gift from the Dr. Phillips Charity Foundation. And we love where we're at because we're in a community that struggles with food security. We're close to downtown. We're close to very densely populated areas, and we're doing exactly what we should be doing within this community. So this is a diagram of the campus. And essentially, you're in the education building. You're in phase one of the campus, which includes the education building and the greenhouse. So to my left, your right, is about an 18,000 square foot greenhouse that we'll talk a little bit more about. And then the education building, which allows us to partner with Valencia College, UCF College of Medicine, and other entities in Orlando to teach university students, medical students about this concept of food as medicine. In addition, we can host wonderful events like tonight, and we have many activities like this. This is open to the public. Folks can lease this space, really any opportunity they want. John likes to say, as you come to the campus, think very selfishly about how we can serve you and serve your patients and serve your community. So this is phase one of the campus. And what has been created so far is the education building. And you were sitting in one of only two buildings in the entire southeastern United States that's designated as a living building. So it's not just the fact that this building generates more energy than it uses. The way it was created and built was with a minimal carbon footprint. So the vast majority of the wood and the panels and everything you see here was resourced within 500 miles. Very strict criteria. And what we wanted to show was the power of sustainability when you think about construction and the fact that we've got solar panels and all these glass panes are controlled by a computer, and we can let in light or block light based upon the temperature and the climate, because we are creating 5% more energy than we use every single day. And so that's the building that you're in right here. And then the greenhouse has multiple growing systems. John's vision for this campus, particularly from a research standpoint, was we want to have multiple ways to grow food. So we have soil-based growing systems, hydroponics, which are water-based growing systems, and aquaponics, where you use the waste from basically fish filtered, and you push it through your irrigation system to naturally nurture your produce. We have all that in the greenhouse. And maybe one day you can come back. By the way, we host the farmers market on this campus, the community farmers market. This month it'll be the 18th, so the third Saturday of the month. But after this month, it'll be the second Saturday of the month. The farmers market is held here, and you can come take a tour and get a better sense of what we're doing when there's a little more light on the property. But it's a beautiful greenhouse. When everything is up and growing appropriately, we'll produce about 40,000 pounds of produce a week. A lot of that produce will go towards our Meet the Need program, our CSA, and eventually some of the resources that we have on campus. So what I want to do now is, hopefully my video will work. If you can use your imagination a little bit, I want to show you a video that our architects created about phase 2 of the campus, and this will tell you a little bit about what's to come. Okay. All right, so we're a few years down the road, and we've got some beautiful groves of citrus trees that are around the campus. And now you're looking down on multiple buildings, our event center, which I'll talk a little bit about, our farm-to-table restaurant. To the right here is our Culinary Health Institute, where we'll have a medical clinic using a food-first approach to healthcare. You can see our barn, which will be under construction really in just a few weeks. This is our farmer's market with the red top to the roof there. So this will be a farmer's market that's open year-round. You can see our lawn and our stage, where we'll be able to host multiple events, concerts, community events, have yoga on the lawn, etc. All this construction for phase 2 will begin before June. So phase 2, the things that you're seeing in this rendering, lots of art, lots of places for individuals to come. We think folks will want to come to the campus and stay for hours, not just eat, but hang out, learn. And this is what you're seeing is pretty much the 18 acres, that we're developing right now. So that's what's to come. And let me talk a little bit about the Culinary Health Institute, and then I'll wrap my comments up. So I'm really blessed to be a part of this initiative we call the Culinary Health Institute. Our Chief Medical Officer you're going to get to meet in just a few minutes, and we are very blessed to have one of the nation's leaders in lifestyle medicine and culinary health leading our enterprise. But other than Dr. Agarwal and myself, we don't really have a team that has a lot of healthcare background. We've got ag science professionals that work here. We have lots of educators that work here. So we needed some partners in order to launch our Culinary Health Institute. And so I want to reference a couple of those partners. Advent Health is an investor in the Culinary Health Institute, which is incredibly important, but they're also providing clinical guidance. As we think about which specialties we want to launch with, it will be Advent Health specialists that help us move forward with our Culinary Health Institute. Most likely we'll begin with oncology, cardiovascular medicine, and diabetes, metabolic health, as you could imagine. Florida Blue is also a partner. Florida Blue is interested in testing different payment models for covering things like prescription produce delivered at a clinic, medically tailored meals, what's the research, the evidence around us. We're going to have these partners to allow it to happen. And Gordon Food Service is the second largest distributor of food in the United States, kind of like Robert Orr Sysco. They're more known in the North and the Northeast, but they are a great partner because they have lots of capabilities around food as medicine and medically tailored meals. Medically tailored meals, if you're not familiar with that, is basically frozen food meals that are curated to address unique medical conditions that frequently are delivered to a patient's home after hospitalization. Medicare Advantage programs all have some kind of medically tailored meal benefit. So anyway, this building is coming. Construction will start soon. Just to my right, your left, it'll be built. And this is the inside of it. It will not look like a traditional clinic. Imagine walking into that large lobby on the left and you immediately smell an incredible aroma of food being prepared somewhere in the building. The dietitian sitting in the lobby, a prescription produce table where you'll walk out of the clinic with a bag of groceries that's uniquely curated for your medical condition. You'll see your physician in a clinic that looks very different than a traditional clinic environment. You'll go downstairs, you may be working with your physician in a shared medical appointment as they're in the kitchen with you, and then you leave with your prescription produce. And then you're supported over time with educational classes, workshops. That's our vision for what we hope to accomplish here. And so the primary pillars of the Culinary Health Institute, these are the things that will be happening. We will certainly be doing research. Much of this will be clinically oriented. What are our clinical outcomes? In what ways do our patients improve? We're going to have a phytonutrient lab where we can test the nutritional quality of the food that we grow, so we can know which soil system's producing the most nutritious, nutrient-dense tomato or whatever it might be in terms of the desired outcome. Lots of education will be happening. We will have interns. We will be working with medical students. We're already doing that. The UCF College of Medicine is sending us a number of medical students here in February, where every Friday they'll be studying under Dr. Agarwal and learning principles of food as medicine and culinary health. In addition to that, we're having our own CME course here on February the 22nd. Candace, if I haven't yet, I'll send you the electronic flyer. You're all welcome to be a part of that. It's a food as medicine course that will be led by our medical director, Dr. Monica Agarwal, and a number of other speakers that are nationally known in this arena. Advocacy is important, having more resources for all of our patients in relationship to food as medicine resources, medically tailored meals, things of that nature. And as I said earlier, having a place where people can go to see physicians who've been uniquely trained to care in this manner. And when it's all said and done, we hope to have a very measurable impact on this community. We believe once everything is built, our farm-to-table restaurant, the event center where we're going to host weddings, corporate events, lots of different activities that will have about 300,000 annual visitors to the campus. And you'll be able to just come and walk around free of charge if that's what you want to do, and then you can access resources as they're important to you. Our clinic will be very much based in services that are billed to insurance. It's not a concierge kind of medical clinic. It will be designed to use existing billing codes that hopefully most insurances will cover. We want to have a significant economic impact in a number of ways. We're looking forward to training our future healthcare leaders, medical students, residents from every discipline you can imagine. At some point, we're going to have another farm away from here where we're going to be training farmers to practice regenerative farming in ways that make the soil better than when they started. And so many farmers are already thinking that way. They just need a place to practice and really perfect their methods. And then we want all of us to be more empowered to make more conscious choices about the food that we consume in relationship to the connection between soil and human health. How can I help? If you want to be involved, you can volunteer. You can go on our website and sign up and come out on a morning and volunteer as an individual. You can bring your whole office out here. We'd love that. You can be an advocate. Just talk about what we're doing. Just tell your friends and family. Come out, take a tour, come to the farmers market on Saturday. We're happy to come anywhere and tell this message. We always welcome groups to come. We give tours. Some of them you can just schedule it, but we can bring groups. However you want to do that. If you want to become a donor, if you want to contribute, you certainly can. But anyway, there's a lot of ways to get involved. So anyway, we are excited to host you here tonight. Thank you for taking the time. And I know we've got a schedule that we need to stay on, but I'll be here through the evening. If anyone wants to ask me questions and wants more information, happy to have that conversation with you. But thank you very much.
Educated at the very finest colleges, universities, medical schools. It's very, very impressive. But his pedigrees aside, he is the kind of doctor that we all dream of having. He's one with an encyclopedic knowledge of medicine, and he's got unrivaled dedication to patient care. What truly sets him apart, though, is the way he connects with his patients with empathy, and he gives them their undivided attention to every patient. And I think everybody in this room really realizes that. And in fact, he pays so much attention to detail. I'm pretty sure he's the only doctor that knows the name of every patient's dog. So, yeah. So I'd really like to have everybody welcome Dr. Leish, a truly remarkable physician and just the best advocate for CF.
Help me, how do I do?
So here's the slide.
Okay. Okay. Everybody hear me okay? So thank you, Candace, for that very kind introduction. I don't think my mother could have been so kind. And it's the dogs. I'm not a cat person, so I focus on the dogs. So. But welcome again, everybody, and very exciting time for cystic fibrosis. As just last month we had approval of a new generation of medications for treating cystic fibrosis, thanks to Vertex, which has first given us Kalydeco, which was only helpful for about 5% of people with cystic fibrosis that had to have a certain gene that was the gating mutation. And then we've been through Orkambi, Symdeko. Trikafta has only been out for 5 years and has really been, as I think most of you know, Trikafta has really been a game changer. And so now we're moving into even the next generation beyond Trikafta with Alyftrek. And the three components of Alyftrek are somewhat similar to Trikafta. For example, the tezacaftor is the same, that's Trikafta, and with the new medication, what they call a CFTR corrector, the cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulator. So as you guys know, there's at least 1,900 genes that can cause cystic fibrosis, but they all affect what they call the cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulator, which is coding for the chloride channel in the cell membrane. So the body has to move the chloride across the cell membranes, and people who don't have CF don't think about it. It works. And people who have CF suffer the consequences of this impaired chloride transport. This is what leads to the salty skin, the salty kids that's traditionally what moms would notice, that the baby had salty skin. And the diagnostic test is the sweat chloride test, which for many of you, it might be something that you or your family member had done 20, 30 years ago for diagnosis, but we're going to come back to that in a minute as to the importance specifically with this new medication. So the other components is the DUTA-ivacaftor, which, as you can hear, sounds very similar to ivacaftor. So ivacaftor is the component of Kalydeco, and the DUTA-caftor, my understanding is that it's just a slight modification to the ivacaftor that allows it to be longer lasting, and thus we have once-a-day dosing, which is a nice convenience. Even, as all of you guys know, with Trikafta twice-a-day dosing, compared to everything that people with CF have been going through for years, using their vest, using their Pulmozyme, using enzymes, a pill twice a day was not a major burden for most people, but now we're even going to once a day. And so the only really new component of Alyftrek is this Vanzacaftor, which is the new modulator. So these three medications work together almost like an assembly line, moving the chloride from point A to B, B to C, C to D, and working together. So we've talked a little bit about the gene itself and the modulators, and we've already known with Trikafta improvement in quality of life, lung function, nutrition we were just talking about, but I think really what we're seeing with nutrition especially is weight gain. Most people with CF tend to be under ideal body weight, and that's why the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation requires us, and we're blessed to have Candace and Stacy as our dietitians, helping to get people up to their ideal body weight and sometimes deal with more weight gain than people may want with medications like Trikafta. So again, going back to the sweat chloride, so up until now, we've really looked at sweat chloride mostly as a way to initially make the diagnosis. Almost everybody with cystic fibrosis will have the elevated sweat chloride levels, and then from there, we move on to the genetic testing. But the concept now with some of this research with Alyftrek is also looking at the sweat chloride as a target for therapy to be able to show actually improved sweat chloride levels, which then correlates with normalization. So people that are not right now moving the chloride properly across these cell membranes, if we can normalize the sweat chloride, we're treating the root cause of the problem. If you think about it, up until these Vertex drugs became available, we had the problem with the chloride transport, which would lead to thick mucus in the lungs. So we would use mucus thinners like Pulmozyme, devices like a vest to mobilize that thick mucus, antibiotics to treat the infections that were a consequence. But this is really a whole new era where we're actually treating the fundamental cellular level defect that's causing cystic fibrosis. And this new medication is the next generation in that. So this slide sort of shows you that the higher the sweat chloride, this correlates with more severe cystic fibrosis. CF can be possible with levels even below 60, but below 30, it's very unlikely. So it's really it's kind of a linear spectrum that the higher the sweat chloride, typically the more severe the cystic fibrosis. And this also shows in terms of survival, if we can bring the sweat chloride level. So this is historic data that's not specific for Alyftrek, but this gives you the background of why sweat chloride is important to think about, even though traditionally, most people with CF don't remember what their sweat chloride was 20 years ago. And it's not necessarily something that we anticipate following clinically. So if we start somebody on this new medication, people might be excited and find out, what's my sweat chloride level? My understanding is that's not something that's going to be recommended that we have to, monitor. But on the studies, we can show you what was achieved in the studies. Also improved, the sweat chloride also correlates with improvements in the decrease in pulmonary exacerbations and also in the FEV1. FEV1 is forced expiratory volume in 1 second, which is the correlate for lung function. How much air can somebody blow out in 1 second? And typically, as lung disease worsens with cystic fibrosis, the FEV1 declines. And so the sweat chloride levels correlating with improvement in lung function is critical. And also with exacerbations, what we know is that every time somebody has an exacerbation, it's time away from work, time away from school, time not feeling well, but also it's an exacerbation we think is a time that the decline in lung function is most likely to occur. So if somebody starts at 100% lung capacity and has an exacerbation, maybe they go back to 99, they have another exacerbation, they go back to 98. So every time there's an exacerbation, there may be some permanent damage. So if we can reduce number of exacerbations, then people feel better, people don't miss as much work, as much as school, and also they preserve the lung function. So now looking at the new medication, the VNZ is the abbreviation for Alyftrek, and it's shown in the studies that it is superior to the ELX, as the Trikafta, in the proportion of individuals who had sweat chloride levels below 60 and below 30, which are important cutoffs, as I showed you earlier. And there's some, fancy statistics that I won't go through. As far as safety, the safety data looks very similar between Alyftrek and Trikafta. One of the big concerns is liver function monitoring. So this is why we need to do blood tests. By and large, as long as we get the blood test done, and if we start seeing any change in liver function, then we can modify dose or look at other medications that might be affecting liver, or look at other things that could be affecting liver function, alcohol intake, Tylenol intake, etc. So by and large, we can deal with that as long as we're monitoring it. Now, with the recent approval of Alyftrek in December, the FDA actually went back and changed the labeling recommendations as well for Trikafta. So this is something that I just found out a couple of days ago. So Trikafta was approved in 2019, so it's been out for 5 years, but the FDA just last month changed the recommendation. So anybody that would be starting Trikafta as of now would need, the recommendation is for monthly blood tests to check liver function for the first 6 months, which is also the recommendation from the FDA for Alyftrek. And I think that's going to be a discussion that we're going to have with each patient as far as, how much of a burden is that going to be and how closely do we need to follow that exact recommendation, because, with Trikafta, that is not an experience that, I'm saying this just as my own personal professional opinion. I can't say this, I'm not here on behalf of Vertex or the FDA or anything like that, but in our experience, this has not been enough of a concern that would warrant monthly blood tests. But that's what the FDA has recommended. So other than that, a lot of the side effects that you see listed here are things that people with cystic fibrosis are dealing with anyway. I did ask the medical science liaison about things like depression and anxiety, because we've had a number of our folks that have been on Trikafta. That's one of the things that people have complained about with Trikafta that we didn't see as much with Orkambi and Symdeko. And really right now we don't have enough data through the research studies. There was not a signal, one way or the other, that there was anything worse or anything really better than Trikafta. But it is, there's enough of a change that I'm hoping that people that have had side effects like that with Trikafta would definitely be worth trying the new medication, because it is a different medication. And that's also a decision that we're going to leave up to our patients as far as whether everybody, wants to switch from Trikafta to this new medication. There might be some people who are doing fine on Trikafta and, don't mind taking a medication twice a day. So we don't plan to force everybody to switch, but at least to have that discussion with everybody to see, what makes sense for you going forward. The other thing that's exciting is that there are some additional gene types that are now eligible for Alyftrek that were not previously eligible for Trikafta. So I think I mentioned with Kalydeco, with the first medication that became available, only about 5% of people with CF had the correct gene type that could benefit from Kalydeco. And gradually, as the research has been moving forward, things have been getting better and better. So with Trikafta, that was up to about 90%. And now with Alyftrek, there's even a few additional genes. So certainly, we plan to go through our database and see, but if you're either here as a patient or listening online, and if you're a patient that was told that you're not eligible for Trikafta, give us a couple of weeks to go through, but give us a holler because we want to make sure that we get as many people that are eligible, at least access or the opportunity to try this new medication. And the CF Foundation, I know, is committed to their motto is no gene left behind. So even if we're, in that, 8 or 9% now that are not eligible, I know that Vertex and other companies and the CF Foundation are working on other therapies that may not be gene specific, but this is definitely very exciting. So in conclusion, Alyftrek is a next generation, highly effective CFTR modifier that was not inferior to Trikafta in improving lung function. I thought maybe I skipped that slide, but so the not inferior means it's equivalent in terms of lung function. Now, there's a couple of points I wanted to make here. One is that, with Trikafta already showing a lot of improvement, then it creates a pretty high benchmark to be able to show improvement above that. That's one of the challenges. The other challenges with any clinical study is what they call the endpoints, the primary endpoints. And the statisticians tell us that the endpoints have to be chosen up front. So in other words, if you design a study and you say we have this new medication for cystic fibrosis, we think it's going to improve FEV1 lung function. If you do the study and then you start noticing that people have, let's say, just making this up, better cholesterol levels, you can't go to the FDA and say, you know, we didn't think it was going to improve cholesterol, but look at that, it improved the cholesterol. It has to be in your predetermined primary endpoint. So this really makes designing clinical studies very difficult, because you almost have to know before you do the research, you know, what the outcome is that you expect, and then to be able to achieve those benchmarks. So the fact that it was non-inferior, basically what that tells me is the new medication is once a day instead of twice a day. It is at least as good as Trikafta in terms of improving lung function in the scope of these studies that were done that were up to about a year. And it is superior in terms of improving the sweat chloride levels. And then the million-dollar question is, what is going to be the future benefit of improving the sweat chloride levels? The thinking, I think, of myself and most people in the CF community is that there's going to be a lot of downstream benefits to normalizing sweat chloride, because the sweat chloride is affecting every cell in the body, the sinuses, the lungs, the intestinal tract, the pancreas. So every place in the body where the chloride transport is abnormal, this new medication is going to do better than Trikafta in terms of normalizing. And so we just don't know. Is that going to lead to, you know, maybe, God willing, less pancreatic insufficiency, maybe lower rates of cystic fibrosis-related diabetes, improved liver function? These are all things that are speculative on my part. I can't say that none of this has been proven, but we know that sweat chloride translates, you know, lower sweat chloride levels translate into better outcomes, better survival, and we know that Alyftrek lowers the sweat chloride levels. Any questions about the kind of things that I've said so far? Yeah. So myself, I only take care of adults, so I don't know as much about what we're seeing in the pediatric population. That's a great question. We have some people here from the
peds, and we screen routinely now because we start screening now at 3.
Okay. Right. And so you've seen a little bit more depression, anxiety in Trikafta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Teens to teenagers, and now we're screening younger.
Right.
The younger population.
Yeah, we definitely.
We don't see a lot of it, but
Right.
it's enough to warrant frequent screening.
Right. So we try to, you know, mention to people. I mean, there is, you know, I think with any chronic disease like cystic fibrosis, there's going to be a higher chance of having depression and anxiety in that setting. You know, one of the things that always try to explain to my medical students and so forth is that you never get a day off from cystic fibrosis, as all of you know. And, you know, so hard to, you know, most of our people with CF that we take care of say they spend 2-3 hours a day, even on a good day, just taking care of their CF and maintaining. And, you know, everybody wants a break, a vacation, and CF doesn't give that to you. So, you know, and then the anxiety about not knowing what the future holds and your life expectancy, and, you know, all the other kids are, you know, able to do this and do sleepaways and go to summer camp, et cetera. And so we know already that there's more depression and anxiety in people with CF than in the general population, which is why the CF Foundation helps us make sure that we have social workers and do some of these screenings in our CF clinic. But with Trikafta, there definitely seems to be, you know, some people who were not having problems with depression and anxiety before that developed it with Trikafta. Some of the people have noticed that with a little bit lower dose, maybe not taking it every day, or just taking, you know, morning dose and not the evening dose, seems to be beneficial. So we've kind of worked around it that way. So we're definitely hoping that with Alyftrek, we're going to see even less of that problem. But right now, we just don't know. Is there another question in the back? That's a great question. Thank you. Yes.
Question about the medication itself. It's a Trikafta or a new one. You take, for example, medication an X amount of time. And after the X amount of time, the medication doesn't seem to work anymore. Is that predictable for both of those? I mean, my daughter takes Trikafta now for 5 years. And my concern is, if you take antibiotics, at a certain point of time, your body says, you know, this antibiotic, forget it, doesn't work anymore. Is there a chance that that happens with those medications?
So that's a good question. So with antibiotics, what we think is happening is the resistance is related to, you know, if somebody has, a million Pseudomonas in their body and the antibiotic, let's say intravenous tobramycin, kills 990,000, then the ones that are not killed, for some reason, seem to be resistant to that antibiotic, and then they start having, making more baby Pseudomonas, and that's, we think, how the resistance comes up to the antibiotic. So there's really no research that I'm aware of that says that these medicines like Trikafta or Alyftrek should lose efficiency over time. I mean, obviously, people with CF are getting older, and so there's some, cumulative damage. And also don't forget that, people that are starting these medications, let's say later in life, if somebody's 30 years old and they've already had cystic fibrosis damage from 30 years before this medication, then we don't necessarily think that these medications can reverse that. Although, for some people, we've seen some, tremendous improvement, but that's not necessarily the expectation. So, but there doesn't seem to be resistance that we've seen, for example, over the 5 years with Trikafta. There doesn't seem to be people that stop responding. I should have mentioned earlier that the other issues that we saw with Trikafta seem to be pretty similar to Alyftrek in terms of the recommendation to take the medication with fatty meals and some of the interactions, like some of the antifungals. Overall, that seems to be pretty similar. But that's an excellent question. I think that was maybe... so this is a pretty impressive statistic. 2 times higher odds of restoring CFTR function to below the diagnostic threshold for CF, which is a sweat chloride level 60 or below, and 3 times higher odds as compared to Trikafta for achieving normal sweat chloride levels below 30. And again, this is what was shown in the studies with large number of patients. This is not something, and I don't know if anybody from Vertex is allowed to chime in, but this is not something that we're being told we're going to be doing on a routine basis as far as monitoring this in individual patients. That's interesting. I'm sure people are going to be curious to know what their sweat chloride levels are, but that's not something that is routinely being recommended for ongoing monitoring. But we hope that that's going to lead to benefits in the future. Again, benefits that right now we just don't know what they are, but the real presumption is that by treating the underlying root cause, we're not treating the downstream, the infections. This is actually treating the genetic problem and the cellular problem that causes cystic fibrosis. So I'm happy to take any other questions. Are you guys allowed to say anything, or did I miss anything? Okay. All right, the Vertex table, they'll be around. You guys can stop and visit and see if I was lying or anything. All right, and I'll be around too. If you guys think of any other questions later on, then please feel free to stop me for other questions. So thank you.
so grateful for these advances and how they change the trajectory of the disease. So that was a great talk, Dr. Lash. Okay. So next, I would like to introduce Dr. Monica Agarwal. She is a preventative cardiologist, a professor at University of Florida, and the chief medical officer at the 4 Roots culinary medicine program. Her focus has been on the role of nutrition in chronic diseases, emphasizing plant-based nutrition, mind-body techniques, lifestyle medicine in her practice and her research. She has published extensively in leading medical journals and authored Body on Fire and the Complementary Cookbook. She is a fellow of the American College of Cardiology, and she's the chair of their nutrition committee. Yay, gotta love that. Yay. She is nationally recognized as a leader in integrative cardiology and patient education. So we are just thrilled to have her talk with us today, to have such an expert, leading expert in this field. You know, as we are advancing the care of people living with CF, you know, really as a dietitian who's been in the field for over 20 years, you know, we're ready to advance the diet from the legacy diet and really be moving towards a healthier diet. So I'm just really thrilled that she is able to discuss this with us today. So welcome. That's Dion. Alex is going, we are live streaming it, and that's the microphone.
And then if you can just put this like on your laptop, that'd be great. Back part facing up.
Right.
And then
Okay.
the microphone.
Just touch this.
There you go.
Okay. Is it on? Okay. Hey guys, good to see you all. I'm, you know, I was learning. Hi Dan, it's good to see you. Sorry I came in a little late, but I really enjoy learning about a topic I don't know as much about. You know, something that, you know, when I can, you know, age myself here, but as a resident, you know, the kids that were coming in were young and they were sick, and that were coming when I was a medical resident. And, you know, that there's such a change in the medications, and it's such a pleasure to see people aging with CF in a beautiful way. So it's been really neat to see that history and learn about the new therapies. So thank you. So I'm a preventive cardiologist. So like, why do you need a hear from a cardiologist? So I do focus a lot on nutrition because I think that most of our country and our world has shifted away from what food is, because many people don't eat food that looks like the food on the table, right? We pick up our food from the grocery store and we open it from a bag or open it from a box, and our children are learning. They're forgetting that food actually comes from the ground. There are cases where we've given food out to people and they've thrown it away because they heard that it came from the ground. So we've just completely lost our connection to where food comes from. And many of you may look at the food that's in that basket and not actually know what all of it is. And that's okay, because some of it is harder than others. But it's because so many of us have lost that connection. Even our garlic comes in a jar now, right? With oil, we don't eat the garlic, we eat the jar, you know. And so remembering sort of where food came from is part of our mission here at 4 Roots and at the Culinary Health Institute. So I'm proud to be part of an institution where we're actually growing food, teaching doctors about eating healthy, and then trying to get patients to eat healthier food by teaching them how to cook it, how to grow it, and why it's important to eat these foods. So before I start talking about doing my presentation, I just want to get an understanding of who's in the audience. So how many people in the audience are physicians or allied professionals or nurse practitioners? Thanks so much. Okay, and how many people are patients or patient families? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I talk, I walk, I'm interactive. I like the conversation. If you want to raise your hand, ask a question. If you disagree with me, I'll take it, but we may have to go outside and no, I'm just kidding. So the reality is that in America, the number one cause of people dying is heart disease, right? It's heart disease. We often think it's cancer or breast cancer in particular, but we actually die of heart disease. All of our men, our women, it's the number one cause actually in the world and in the United States. While we're getting better with our therapies, we have stents and medications, we have so many things that we can do to make people better, we still aren't decreasing the incidence of the disease. So people continue to have heart disease and it continues to increase. Well, when we think about heart disease, what do we think about in terms of risk factors? We think about genetics. Like if you have a father or mother who had an event at a young age, then we are at higher risk. Well, we can't change our genes, but that is a risk factor. There's high blood pressure or high cholesterol. There's insulin resistance, which is a diabetes type condition, smoking. None of you guys are smoking, obesity, and then there's unhealthy lifestyle. And this is all going to come around to why this is important to CF in a moment. But unhealthy lifestyles such as lack of eating the healthy foods, lack of movement, high levels of stress. I don't know about you, but my stress levels are like here all the time, and I'm trying to work on that piece, right? And so most of us live in this go, 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 check email, gotta run, check on the phone in the car, and as we're multitasking, we're cooking, right? We're just doing all this crazy living, and that impact on your body and on your heart. And then sleep. People don't realize that sleep is super important to human health, not just heart health, but to all health, thinking, memory, activity, energy. You need to sleep. And then there's environmental factors, and all these things play a role in heart disease. The reality is now that almost 1 in 2 of us has high blood pressure. 1 in 2 of us has high blood pressure, and 1 in 10 of us has diabetes, and 1 in 3 of us is pre-diabetic. So that means that we are on the way to becoming diabetic, and 1 in 3 of us. So if you look at the people in the room and say there are 30 people, then you can do the math of how many 10 of us are pre-diabetic. 1/5 of the United States population has high cholesterol. And what's happening is that the world is just getting bigger. Right now that 70% of us are overweight or obese. So in other words, our children no longer look like the child on the left, but they look like the child on the right. So in recent years with cystic fibrosis, with advances in medical therapies and medical care, I don't need to tell you this, there's such a high improvement in life expectancy of children with CF. And now some of the chronic conditions that we see in our sort of non-CF patients their CF patients are getting. We're seeing the same problem actually in congenital heart disease, where kids that didn't get to adulthood are now getting there. How great is that? But unfortunately with that, the diseases of aging are also catching up. So 10 to 30% of cystic fibrosis patients will get heart disease. Usually when we think about heart disease, though, I told you those risk factors, like high blood pressure, obesity, smoking. Well, often our CF patients aren't doing those things. Yet then why are we as CF patients at higher risk? And we think there's 2 things. I mean, when you have lung disease, the low oxygen state that can happen in a cystic fibrosis patient can affect your increased risk of having heart disease. But we actually think that some of the other things are more interesting about CF, and that is the inflammation. And what people don't realize is the word inflammation has become very popular. You probably have seen it in the grocery store shelves because the Eating Well magazine had this big thing. You saw it in the grocery store. I actually did the article in there on that. Yeah, so that was kind of fun. And so, yeah, that was kind of fun. And so, but the word is inflammation. And the reason we think, so what is inflammation? The reason people don't realize, so inflammation is your body's mad at you. And it's when there's a discrepancy between the supply of things you have and the demand on your body. And that triggers inflammation in your heart and in other parts of your body, which then triggers you to develop chronic illness. So we know that CF patients are at higher risk for diabetes, higher salt intakes, chronic kidney disease, and chronic inflammation. And we think those are the triggers for heart disease and what we call atherosclerosis, which is plaque in the heart that we see in our CF patients. So some of this stuff may not make a whole lot of sense to you, so I thought we'd start with the diagram of the heart vessel. This is a blood vessel of the heart. It's a pipe, okay? And it's important to all of us, and this is important for the people in the room that maybe are just don't have CF or don't have but are worried about their own health, right? Because this is, we're all dying of heart disease, so we got to figure out, we got to understand it, we got to crack the nut. So every blood vessel in the body is related and connected. And the arteries, which are the vessels that take blood to the body, to take healthy oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, are all at risk for the same condition called atherosclerosis. So when we talk about head disease or stroke, that's heart disease. When we talk about neck disease, that's heart disease. When we talk about heart disease, well, when we talk about leg disease, that's heart disease. It's all the same process. So when you're a child, your blood vessel looks like this. It's nice and soft. It opens and closes based on if you need more or less blood. But as you develop risk factors for heart disease like high cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, inflammation, what happens is that you start building irritated areas on the blood vessel wall. You can think of them as cracks in the blood vessel or irritated areas. And your body's not stupid. It's like, oh my God, I got to fix that. So it sends over the platelets over to the blood vessel wall and it heals it, like it puts a little Band-Aid on it or a scab. But a blood vessel is a circle. And if you put a scab in a circle, what does it do? It starts closing off the blood vessel, right? And so over time, you go from being a fatty streak to then becoming a plaque. And then that plaque gets a little bit bigger and then it can rupture. And when it ruptures or closes, that causes a heart attack. We think the trigger for that plaque rupture is inflammation. So our goal here today is to talk about how to remove and reduce that inflammation. So a lot of inflammation that happens in our body is because of what we put into it and what we eat. So I like to think about this kind of order of operations. What we eat goes into our gut. Our gut bugs are actually very important because that's where a lot of inflammation starts. And you're gonna say, wait, what? And I'm gonna explain that to you because inflammation then triggers illness. So it's always about poo, right? It's all about poo. You think as we get older, we think about poo, but we really should be thinking about poo our whole life because poo is really important because what it is inside your gut, you have a billion trillion bugs. They're gut bugs. They're bacteria mostly, but they're viruses, they're fungal, and 90% of the cells in our body are actually here in this gut. So some people actually say that we have more, and well, I should tell you that all those bacteria have their own DNA. So that DNA is also helpful in how we feel. So it's responsible in how our get up and go, like our dopamine, our serotonin, which makes us happy. It has histamine. All these endocrine hormones that our body makes, many of them are made in our gut. You can imagine and think about like IBS, right? Or when people feel, what happens like when you're really nervous? You get diarrhea, you get bloated, you get gassy, right? So there's such a strong connection between the brain and the brain. And so some people actually call your gut your second brain because it has so much of a connection to how you do as a person. And we know that those bugs change from the moment you're born. So if you're born vaginally, your bugs in the baby's gut are similar to the vagina of the mother. If you're born by cesarean section, the bugs in the baby are the same as the skin of the mother. every time you take antibiotics, you damage the bugs in your gut. And this is important, right? In CF, we take so many antibiotics. So those bugs are affected by whether you breastfeed, whether you give formula, whether they touch the dog and they eat the toy. Everything that we do in a day-to-day basis affects our flora. And when that flora changes, then we know that certain bugs in the gut are associated with certain illnesses. So we've actually been able to track the bugs. There's millions, trillions of bugs, but we have found patterns where certain people who have heart disease, who have diabetes, who have all these risk factors that I'm talking about, they have a certain class of bugs. Whereas the people that are healthier, that are leaner, that are stronger, they have a different class of bugs. So there was a study done in Africa. It's a really great study. It was done in Africa where they looked at Africans who were born in Africa in a village. And they were eating foods that were primarily plants, very little meat, nothing processed. And they looked at their gut, and they had literally no polyps. They had nothing wrong with their guts. They had no inflammation, and they had all these things called short-chain fatty acids, which are these anti-inflammatory pieces. And then they looked at an African American community who was eating a primarily Western diet, highly processed, unfortunately, because it was sort of a lower economic community. And what they found was that they had so many polyps. They had so much inflammation, and they had very low amounts of those short-chain fatty acids. Well, you could say, as the scientists and some of us in the room would say, wait, so what? Like Africans are that's a different gene pool than the African American. That's so different. So what they did was they took the African Americans and they gave them the diet in the African community. And they gave the Africans the African American diet. And what happened? The people who were in the African American community who ate the African diet, their inflammation went down, their polyps receded, and their short-chain fatty acids went up. And the Africans who ate the African American diet, they developed inflammation, they developed polyps, and their short-chain fatty acids went down. How soon did this happen, do you think? 7 years? 6 months? 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you can change your gut bugs by just eating healthier food. Is this going on timer? Has this been just going off while I've been chatting? Oh my gosh. Well, that's very funny. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's on timer, but I'm going to have to, yeah.
Good question. I was fascinated by the C-section versus vaginal delivery.
Yeah.
So is there any data on, how do babies do 6 months after C-section versus vaginal?
So it's not that these kids who were born, some people are like, oh God, I'm doomed, I was C-section, like, oh God. No, but so we don't know fully what it all means, but we know it's different. We know that people who are exposed to more bugs when they're growing up, infections when they're growing up, they have sturdier immune systems, right? And we know that they have certain bugs in their gut that are different than other people. We don't know fully well enough. Like, we can't say, well, that's what people are doing, right? They're trying to create these probiotics and say, you take this one, it's going to solve everything, right? But we don't really know what bugs to put in there. We're learning, but this is going to be like the Genome Project. This is what people are working on, actually, is the Microbiome Project, which is what this is, trying to understand what bugs are good, what bugs are bad, and there's so many nuances. And so to be continued on what that's going to do. So what do we know about, so just talking about those bugs, because I love them. I'm a cardiologist who talks about poo. So if you eat, so who cares what the names are? Prevotella, Firmicutes, who cares? Okay, but let's call them the P's and the F's, okay? And I'm going to tell you that we want more P's than F's, okay? If you eat a high-fat Western diet, your P's go down and your F's go up. If you eat less fat and less carbs, your P's go up and your F's go down. If you increase your fiber and you eat more and more, see, it's changing on its own. I know there's some way to fix that, but I'm not tech savvy at all. I have to call in my kids for that. So if you eat more fiber and more plant-based, you increase the P's and decrease the F's. And if you get gastric bypass, you actually increase the P's and decrease the F's. And we know that those P's are associated with healthier lifestyles. And we know the people who have the F's, more of the F's, they're more likely to get heart disease. So we want to focus on having more P's. But it's not as simple as P's and F's, unfortunately, because there's so much nuance, which is what I was kind of explaining. But we do know that there are classes forming that we want to see, and we know that fiber has a lot to do with it. So what's wrong with our diet? Like, who cares? You know, okay, fiber, got it. Like, how you keep drumming the, you know, beating the drum, right? So the problem is that the #1 cause of us dying in America, dietary. It bypasses smoking. It is the worst thing we're doing is we're eating an American diet. Well, what is it? Some people call it the SAD diet, the standard American diet. What is it? It's high in processed foods. If you look in the grocery store, over 50% of the grocery store comes in a box. True or false? True or false, right? High in saturated fat. Well, what's that? Saturated fat is like the fat that is damaging our blood vessels. It comes from red meat and cheese primarily, fried foods. I know, we're hurting you. I haven't had cheese in 14 years. Sugars. Like it's that, oh, you know, who can eat 1 bite of pasta? Like it is impossible. I can't, if I take a bite of pasta, I have this much pasta because it has so refined that all we want to do is eat it. It's addictive. Our foods are low in fiber. Nobody poops anymore. I would have everybody raise their hand because I've done that before, but I'll keep you guys a little private because I do ask people all the time, who has a bowel movement every day? And I'm not going to have you answer because not everybody, like, there are a lot of people in the room who won't say yes because, you know, it's private. Let's keep it private. Let's keep it private. The reality is that many people in America are constipated, or they think it's normal to not have a bowel movement every 3 or 4 days. Oh, I have a bowel movement. That is not normal. It is never normal. It is not normal, and it needs to be fixed. And most of the time, it's because you don't eat enough fiber. And so much of the time when people say, well, if I eat beans or if I eat fiber, it doesn't agree with me. I get bloated or gassy. That's the point. You need to get that in order to get better. Because your body, your bugs have to look at this stuff and be like, oh my God, what the heck is that? And then over time, the bad bugs get kicked out and the good bugs come in. So 75% of packaged foods in the US now contain added sugars, and most of them come from sugar-sweetened beverages. So if you look at this sugar, I love the sugar shockers because I do an event sometimes with the kids, with my students or my medical students, and I make them take sugar and put it into a separate container so they can see how much sugar they're ingesting in a day. So what about this naked smoothie? Everybody loves that. Oh, it's so healthy. There are 60 grams of sugar in a naked drink. What about a soda? Lemon lime soda. I used to love to drink Mountain Dew. 77 grams of sugar. That's how I got through medical school. 77 grams. Huh? What's that? Oh, sure. But I got, as a result, I also got 77 grams of sugar. What about, the Starbucks iced coffee, right? It has 31 grams of sugar. So, you know, you may say, well, I don't really know what's bad or good. Is any sugar okay or not? Well, we don't want women to have more than 25 grams of sugar per day and men to have 36 grams per day. Oh, I don't want you. Sorry, Dan. It's ridiculous. I don't know how to use this projector. So 36 grams in a man and 25 in a woman. So let's just think So if you had that naked drink in your day, you've already had 2 times the amount of sugar, and that's just in one drink. So this is something to think about, like, oh, it all of a sudden starts feeling a little like, oh, okay. But the part of the problem is we just don't know, right? The advertising, by the way, is built so you don't know. We spend almost $140 billion promoting Cheetos, Frito-Lay, these kind of foods to actually low socioeconomic communities. So we actually target poor African American and poor Latino communities with ultra-processed foods. How crazy is that? $140 billion. Sorry, thanks, Dan. Next slide.
Advance?
Yeah, please. What about a Southern diet? When I moved to Florida, I'm from the North, I will tell you. I am from the North. I've had many jokes about this in my past. When I moved to the University of Florida, I changed the meal plan for the patients. I changed everybody to unprocessed, primarily plant-based diet. And when I first sat down with the dietary team, the vice president of dietary, she sat down, she goes, and I explained to her what I'd like to do. And she said, Dr. Agarwal, you're from the North, right? Right? And I was like, well, I'm actually from Maryland, which is south of the Mason-Dixon line, but we're not going to talk about that. And so I said, yeah, I'm from the North. And she goes, well, this here's the South, and we like to eat a certain way in the South. Okay, so I get that, but the Southern diet doesn't work. The Southern diet, if you eat a Southern diet compared to a standard Mediterranean diet, you have a 56% higher rate of heart disease, 50% higher rate of kidney disease, and 30% higher rate of stroke. Southern diet doesn't work. That's okay. We can all change, right? I have a deer hunter in my clinic who makes deer, who hunts deer for a living and eats deer. He's plant-based. Go figure. He didn't want to have any more stents in his heart. Next slide. Oh, yeah. Not only is the food quality bad, it's so much bigger. In 1950, a burger used to be 4 ounces. A burger now is 12 ounces. A soda used to be 7 ounces, and now you can get a 42-ounce drink plus free refills. More bang for your buck. Next slide. Thank you, Dan. So what are optimal diets? They're plant-forward. They're plant-forward. Does that mean, oh my God, I got to be vegetarian, she's going to take away all my meat? No. It means I want you to eat a foundation of plants. Whether that is DASH, vegetarian, vegan, whole food, plant-based, Mediterranean, these are all plant-forward. They have a base and foundation of plants. So what does that mean? So let's talk about it. Come on, next forward. Sorry, Dan. So first I want to tell you that these studies have been shown to reduce your cholesterol, reduce your weight, reduce your sugar, reduce inflammation, reduce blood pressure, heal your gut, and reduce heart disease. So this applies to all of us in this room, CF or otherwise, because we can all we all have some of this. And so even though CF patients don't have high blood pressure and high cholesterol necessarily, they are sure getting diabetes now, right? And they are definitely getting atherosclerosis or heart disease, and they definitely have inflammation. Next slide. So this is just a cool, my only one science picture because I just love it. So I read stress tests. So this is a stress test on the left, and we want your heart to look like a donut. And when it doesn't look like a donut, it has a hole in it. Am I going over time? I may be going over time. Then it has a blockage here. That's a blockage. And so this patient had a blockage in their heart, and so they had a heart catheterization, and this blood vessel, which should look like that, looked like this. It means that there's decreased blood flow. And this person, all they did, because they refused medication, was they changed their diet. In 3 weeks, their stress test normalized. In 2 years, their blood vessel was normal. Okay, I know that I'm running short on time, so I'm going to move. I'll take over. Thank you. You're so nice, Dan. Thank you. So I want to just point out quickly that what healthy versus not healthy is, there are many plant-based foods that are not healthy. So I don't want you to go around thinking that you can eat the fake meat, the Impossible Burgers, and that these are good for you. That there's butter, the non-dairy butter. Oh, she wanted me to eat plant-based. But those are all not good for you. French fries are plant-based. Oreos are plant-based. Coca-Cola is plant-based. So just want to remember that we want to go back to eating foods that look like that. Real food, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, not Pepperidge Farm, not Arnold bread, not the bread from Publix that's been sitting there for 15 years and never goes bad. That's not bread. We want to go back to eating oats, not instant oats, but whole oats, where you have to sit with your food. And we're all in a rush. I got 3 kids, 2 dogs, and too many jobs. But I never take away from my food, because I know that that is what is going to make me healthy, and that's what's going to sustain me. And so I want you to look at foods that take a little time in the kitchen, that you have to cut vegetables for, that you have to stew in a pot for a little while, because those are the foods that are going to keep you alive. Beans and lentils. They don't have to be in a bag. You have to soak it you can do the can. They all work. If you think that the bean is too hard to dry and use an Instapot and all that, use a can. But cook the beans, eat the beans, use them in a salad, put them in a stew, put them in anything you can think of. Eat beans every day, all day. Nuts and seeds. People say, oh, but they give me so much gas. But remember, what I'm telling you is that the gas is only at the beginning, because when you don't have fiber, you will get gas. But over time, it will get better. I usually tell my patients 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks where you're going to laugh, you're going to be uncomfortable, you're going to have to make fun with your husband and your friends because it's funny. Because you're going to be farting. You're going to be really sort of making fun, and it's funny. But after about 2 weeks, it gets better. So some quick tools. I want you to avoid trans fats. Trans fats are foods that come in anything that says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, anything that's fried, anything that comes from Dunkin' Donuts. These are things that, these are trans fats. They are outlawed in foods, but not really. You can still get them in low amounts, and as long as they stay below a limit, they can call it 0 trans fats, even though they're not trans fat free. Reduce your saturated fat, which comes from red meat, cheese, fried food, much less in your poultry, much less in your fish, absent in your beans and your lentils. Eat complex carbohydrates that are high in fiber, like beans and greens. Every single day, think about a way, how can I incorporate something like that into my food? Sometimes I put cans out on my counter and I'll say, okay, how could I use this today? And I think about how I can incorporate that food into my meal. And avoid simple sugars. If you can make it in 2 seconds, fast, anything that says fast, quick, do not buy it. If you open it up and you grab on the chip, that's not what you want to be eating. Save your body, decrease the inflammation, try to walk away, and it is super tempting. They actually test the amount of crunch, the amount of softness. When it goes into your mouth, they want to know, like, when you chew it, is it the right crunch so people will keep eating it? They even test like how soft, if it gets too soft in your mouth. This has all been studied by Frito-Lay and those kind of organizations. So they know that these foods are highly addictive. Stop buying them. Stop buying them from your kids. Stop saying, oh, they're little and they can get these foods. You could raise them like I raise mine, which you could probably think my kids are, awful right now, poor kids, because they'll say things like, Mama, I don't like kale, and I'll say, honey, I love you, but I don't care. I'm joking. They are now older now, and they have started eating, they eat so many greens, But it's not that they don't eat junk food, right? There's always a place for silliness and whatever, and going to a party or whatever. But as long as most of the time you're eating those healthy foods, who cares about once in a while? I'm going to skip because I chatted too much and chatted, and I know I'm over time, but I wanted to just give you one more comment. I wanted to show you sort of healthy carbs and, oh, now I have no picture. I wanted to show you healthy carbs and unhealthy carbs really fast, and make sure that you see what a healthy carb looks like. I don't think I'm going to get the screen back, but a healthy carbohydrate. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands when we say carbohydrates, carbohydrates are not the enemy. So when people are eating these low carb diets, that is not the diet we're aiming for. It's the low refined carbohydrate diet, which is all those refined carbs are inflammatory. So but beans and lentils and greens, those are all carbs, but they're healthy carbohydrates. It's the chips, the crackers, the cookies, the cakes. If you want a cookie, I love to eat cookies. So it's not that I don't like to eat cookies, but I make them from scratch. I don't go to Publix and pick them up because I want myself and my kids to enjoy these foods that we like. And sometimes I'll change the sugar and I'll put maple syrup, or I'll put applesauce so that I'm getting, or dates. So I'm getting whole foods while I'm still getting something sweet. So I lost my screen. So what I wanted to end with was a picture, but it's going to be just one. I'll just have to describe it to you. We have our genes. We cannot change them, right? We get what we get from our parents. My mom had breast cancer. I may get breast cancer. We have genes that we can't control, but we can change the environment that those genes live in. And we know from heart disease data that if you change your environment, healthier eating, more movement, then it doesn't matter what your genes are. Yes, it puts you at higher risk for things, but you can actually decrease the risk. And by heart disease data, you can decrease your risk by 50% by just changing the environment that your genes live in. Does it matter what you eat? Heck yeah. Does it matter what you do on a daily basis to keep yourself healthy? Absolutely. If we love our kids and we love ourselves, this is what we should focus on. More plants, more unprocessed, and we're all going to do great. Thank you. So what is raw sugar? What is regular brown, white, and brown sugar? Well, where does it come from? Sugarcane. Sugarcane, right. So what is coconut sugar? Just coconut that we made into a processed sugar. So monk sugar, monk fruit sugar, coconut sugar, they're just become these new sexy terms for sugar. Stevia, agave. And so, yes, the less processed of those sugars, like dates and you blend them, or maple syrup, or applesauce, you're getting into the less processed. But just don't, I'm under no misconception, and neither should you be, that these are not sugars. They are all sugar. But some of them are more complex, and that allows you to enjoy maybe that sweet feeling that we all want, but in a more complex way that our body will be more responsive to. Sure. Sure. Is there one more question, I think? Was that it? I think everybody's like, oh God, she's too many plans, too much. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much.
bandage on the top of my head. So I said, I don't want you guys to have to see Frankenstein tonight, so here I am. So my background, I'm a nurse by training. I didn't understand the business of healthcare, so I got my MBA back in the 80s in the St. Louis area. I trained at WashU in the same place as Dr. Leish. I've sort of paralleled my career next to Dan throughout my career. And I was a frontline nurse in critical care and cardiothoracic. And then they said, oh, you need to go take care of organ donors. And I thought, was that because of my clinical skill set or what was going on? I was in the Air Force. I did medical airlift, 2 tours Iraq. When I got back, I went to the University of Minnesota, spent about 15 years at the University of Minnesota. And then a colleague of mine said, you need to come down to Orlando. We need some good healthcare down in Orlando. And that's when I had the opportunity to meet many of the docs at Central Florida Pulmonary Group. Well, my background's in heart and lung transplant, but I also work with kidney, liver, pancreas, adults, and pediatrics. So why am I here representing Immunocompromised Association and why cystic fibrosis patients? I think in 2021, we all learned a lesson when we heard this disease, COVID. And I used to walk around the country seeing people wearing masks in Japan, and I'm going like, what's wrong with these people? Why do they want to do that? And then I figured out, well, I've been telling my patients who we make immunocompromised because of the medication we give them, that we need to do a better way of ensuring we've given them a precious gift, a gift of life. How do we keep that organ functioning so they don't get an infection? Because we're telling the body, we want you to accept that organ. So what I'd like to be able to talk about today is, if I can bring up the slides, is this group it was called Think of Me Please. And I'm gonna hand out, if you could pass these around, I'm gonna leave them in the bag. But there's a wipe in there, but on the back of the wipe is a barcode. And if you think you would like to, or friends of yours would like to join this organization, it's not about, we're not gonna give you medical advice. We leave that up to the doctors to do that. What we wanna do is, if you can't get out of the house because you've got the flu, or you may be infected, or you're prone to getting infections, how can you live life? And we have simple things like door hangers that you can hang on your door so that when the Amazon driver comes and they want to shake your hand, we can teach them, I really do like you as an Amazon. My dog doesn't. He saves my life 20 times a day. Okay.
Sorry about that.
But when you're out and you go to a restaurant or you're out on an airplane or you're in a hotel, what can you do to really keep yourself safe? And if you're in the hospital, what can you do to keep yourself safe even within the hospital? We don't do a great job. If you go into an emergency room right now, you're sitting in a waiting room with people that are coughing and sneezing and throwing up. That's not where I want to be either. So how can we protect ourselves? And that's what Think of Me Please Immunocompromised Association is all about. And I'm honored to be here about cystic fibrosis. And what I'm thrilled about especially is when we see medications like what Dr. Leish is talking about, and I see a drop in lung transplants for pediatric patients because we're doing such a good job in caring for these patients now, that's tremendous. That's great work. So now that I told you a little bit about myself, what I'd like to be able to do is how can you join? And before I do that, there's a person that I met when I first moved to Orlando. His name is Allen Ginsberg, and Allen gives me permission to talk about him. Some of you may know him. He's a very big philanthropist to this area. But about 8 years ago, he had a kidney transplant. And I'd like for you to hear what he says about this organization. All right. My most important person of the evening.
Really, every day is I can live by the credo that every day is a lesson, and I believe it is. Every day I'm thankful that I'm here, and when my time comes and I'm counted out, which comes to all of us, I would hope it is not because of an immunocompromised situation, but I hope that I finally pass away at the ripe old age of 175 this is a serious thing, and for putting up some kind of a little warning to people that I come in contact with, that I'm perhaps a little more fragile than the normal person that's in the meeting.
So what Mr. Ginsburg said is something very important, is at times we're all fragile. I don't care if you're the healthiest person in this room, you are prone to infection. But what we'd like to be able to do, and things like, for example, this past December 31st, we had our first annual international ball drop. And we did for patients, for people that just couldn't leave the house. And it was truly international. We had people from Canada, we had people from Poland that joined us to welcome in the new year. We had a great time. And think about it, if you've got friends that can't get out of the house, don't want to leave the house, that are in the hospital, that are, unable to get out of the home, it's great. My stepmother, who's in a home down, 92 years old, I couldn't keep her quiet during that whole conference. I didn't admit first that she was my stepmother. So please. But Francine Fox is the CEO of the organization. If you have an opportunity and would like to join, please feel free to do so. We don't require any money. We don't require participation from you. If you'd like to, though, that's great. We also have a website where you can ask questions. We're not doctors and nurses when we're functioning in this role, but we will help guide you to the right information. That's basically what I wanted to cover tonight. I am the closing act for tonight, so I'm keeping you from the door. I'm not going to shake people's hands on the way out. So if you have questions, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm sure Dr. Leish, or I don't know if Dr. Agarwal is still in the room, be happy to answer any questions that you may have. All right.
Well, in conclusion, I'd really like to thank everybody for being here tonight. I would like everyone to know, too, that Dr. Calamano is here. He had a really busy clinic day. Okay, yay. He is our co-director. And then we have Dr. Livingston from Nemours. So really like to thank you guys for everybody for coming out. And well, let's try again next year. Okay, well, thank you.